Hello and welcome. This is We Talk Football. Today, I'm coming at you with a topic that we probably, as football fans, we don't really want to talk about this, right? We want to talk about the game, the players, the goals, beautiful moments. Now, this we really don't want to be talking about referees because it takes away from the game, what we watch, what we want to see, which is football, right? So today, that's what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about the controversy of David Coote, the Premier League referee, or maybe I don't know how long that's going to be for his status as a Premier League referee, but he currently still is a Premier League referee. His comments on Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool, and we're going to dive deep, or try, try our best to look at the situation and talk about what we think about it, right? But before we get into that, please subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. On Instagram, it's We Talk Football 24. That's also for YouTube, and on Facebook at We Talk Football. And also, I've recently started. This thing where every week I'm going to post about NBA players and their football comparisons, or what I think is their football comparison. So people in football and in basketball who I think had very similar careers, and what they did, how they played, their similarities, because I found a few players that really remind me of their NBA or football counterparts, however way you want to look at it. So something very interesting and fun that I've been doing for the past 2 weeks. The first week was Ronaldo and LeBron James. This weekend was Magic Johnson and Ronaldinho. Next weekend, I've got two people that I think are top 10 players ever. So you'll see who I'm talking about. Very interesting. I think a lot of people have massive respect for these players, and I love them. So watch out for next weekend's NBA football comparison. But yeah, let's get into the video. David Coote and Premier League controversy. So as I said, today we're going to be talking about Premier League referee David Coote and his comments about Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool. Right? Now a video has surfaced of the Premier League referee David Coote, what it looks like he was in a private setting with his friend, and there was another friend who was recording a video of David Coote talking, right? And he was being asked questions, and I think maybe this, from what I think, right, from what I saw, it looks like this is something that he has talked about with his friends, and they know about how he felt about Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp. And the one friend says, "What do you think about Liverpool?" Right? And then he goes on and talks about Liverpool, and he says, Liverpool are sh, crap, you know what I mean. And he basically, goes off and says, he doesn't like Scousers, people from Liverpool, basically. And he doesn't like Liverpool. Liverpool, as I said, are crap. And then, as the video goes on, you clearly see that he this is truly how he really feels, right? Because you can see it in his face. You can see the dislike and disdain for Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp. And I think one of the turning points, as he mentions, he even has a picture of him officiating a game between Liverpool and I think Burnley during COVID back in 2020. And he has a picture of him standing next to Jurgen Klopp wearing a mask. And I think maybe Jurgen Klopp might have had, something to say to David Coote that he probably did not like. But then he took it very, I guess personally, from what we saw of the video, he took it very personally because, after showing a picture of Jurgen Klopp, of him standing next to Jurgen Klopp back in 2020. He calls, Jurgen Klopp, the C word, right? If you know what I mean. And it was a very strong way to describe a man. And I think that wasn't the worst part for me. I think the worst part was when he mentions Jurgen Klopp's nationality and then refers to him as the C word. So he basically goes, Jurgen Klopp is a German C word, right? And that comes off as a bit racist, especially knowing the history between England and David Coote is an English man, and knowing the history between England and Germany, in terms of what happened in the World War. Also, we know the history, footballing terms, between England and Germany. Right? They don't have a very it's a rival. Between those two teams. It's certainly in terms of footballing language. They don't like each other. So for him to come out and say or describe Jurgen Klopp as a German C word, for me that is I'm not saying he's racist. I don't know what he is, but that what he said, that kind of language did come off as quite racist to me, right? So I think that's a huge thing. That's a huge thing for a referee to say those things. And also, like, how awful was it for or like such a bad idea for him to take to be recorded and nothing said. And you know what, one of his the friend that was next to him did say to the one who was recording the video. There were three people involved: David Coote, his friend that was sitting next to him, and the guy recording. So the one who was sitting next to David Coote, his friend, I don't know their relationship, maybe his friend, said to the person recording, "Look, make sure this video does not come out, because this man is a Premier League referee. He might lose his job." Right? And now it's come out, and there's now he's suspended pending an investigation, right? And so that is true. He might lose his job. He might lose his status as a Premier League referee. And I think now it's becoming more and more clear where this is going, especially what I will talk about a bit later in the video, right? So that was, I think, and this is my opinion, right? All referees are football people, so they probably have teams that they absolutely support. We know about Mike Dean. I can't remember the club that he supports. It's not a Premier League team, it's a lower league team, but we once saw him in a stadium celebrating with the fans frenetically. Like, I couldn't believe that was a Premier League referee, and I have absolutely I actually loved seeing him like that way. And we know Premier League referees, they're people, they probably have teams that they support and they have feelings. But I think you have to be a little more smart as a Premier League referee not to be recorded and talking about how you feel about certain clubs, especially clubs that you have officiated games for, right? Like Liverpool, and in David Coote's, scenario. He's refereed many games for Liverpool, many controversial games for Liverpool and for teams in battles with Liverpool, right? So for him to allow himself to be recorded in a vulnerable position like that was very dangerous, and I think I wouldn't have allowed that. If I was in that situation, I wouldn't have. You can have your opinions, that's not the problem, but it came out now, especially in this age, this time with phones and smartphones, recordings and all that. You have to be more savvy. You have to be more careful about what you do, especially if you're a person in a position of a public figure and in a position of somewhat great responsibility and power as a Premier League referee. You have to be absolutely more careful, right? And I was watching I was watching a podcast on YouTube, and this Liverpool fan was talking about some of the incidences that have happened between Liverpool and games that David Coote has officiated. And I'm going to read through some of the incidences and you'll tell me what you think, right? And I'll let you know what I think. A few years ago, I think this was in 2020. No, this was in, yeah, I think this was in 2020, in the 2020-2021 season, when Jordan Pickford, when studs up, injured Virgil van Dijk, did his knee, and the following few seasons, Virgil van Dijk, you could say he lost some years. You could absolutely say, I think, just because of that tackle, Virgil van Dijk lost valuable years where he was in his prime. He was seen at that point, and it wasn't even close. He was the best centre back in the world. I think his trajectory was going towards like being one of the greatest we've ever seen. I think he still is one of the greatest defenders that we've ever seen, centre backs. He's in my top 10 centre backs all time. But that did him in. I think it slowed down his progress, his progression, his as I said, trajectory, his way of going up because of that injury, right? And Jordan Pickford only just got a yellow card in that game. The Rodri handball versus Everton a few years ago, when Liverpool and Manchester City were challenging for the title, and I think it went down to like Liverpool had 97 points and Man City had 98 points at the end of the season. And in that game, Man City ended up winning 1-0. If that handball had been rightfully given, maybe Everton score and maybe the game ends 1-1, and that essentially is the 2 points that Man City drop to give Liverpool the Premier League. Like this is these are season deciding decisions and moments that David Coote has officiated in, right? And it tilted Liverpool's seasons. The last season, Liverpool went to Arsenal and they lost 3-1. Now, there was a handball by Martin Odegaard that wasn't given. David Coote was the referee. That could have changed the game. Let's say you give Liverpool 2 goals. There's an argument that you say Liverpool would have lost anyway. The score would have still been 3-2. But knowing football, momentum swings and changes. You don't really know where the game could have went if Liverpool had scored a second goal. Maybe they draw the game, maybe they even go on and win. But that decision by David Coote absolutely, had a huge factor in what happened in the game. Could have been a potential penalty, could have been a goal for Liverpool. All right, the Doku kick on McAllister last season at Anfield, that game. Again, David Coote. I remember seeing that and I was like, how is that not given? How is that not given? Especially now with VAR and all the technology that's in the Premier League. How was that flying kick, like a karate flying kick, how is not given as a penalty to Liverpool, right? And and that was David Coote again officiating in that game. And I of course, I think, like, I'm going to point out David Coote in all these moments, but I think the bigger issue that I think is going on here is just the performance of the Premier League referees and the PGMOL. They have been absolutely poor for a number of years now, and the standard of the Premier League as a football league certainly is way up there. It's one of the greatest leagues in the world in just sports. Like, if you look at the NFL, the NBA, the Premier League is right up there as one of the best, greatest leagues in the world. It's certainly the best league in world football. And for the standard of refereeing to be as low as it is, it's baffling, it's shameful, and it's just terrible, right? It begs for an overhaul. It cries out for huge change. by the Premier League to the PGMOL, and something has to be done. Like, I was listening to another podcast. An Arsenal fan was talking about this and said, maybe at first, you can banter around and have a laugh with your friends and say, your team lost or lost points because of a refereeing decision, blah, blah, blah. That's fine and all. But when it happens every weekend and we talk about the referees every weekend, now they coming out with, yellow cards for, silly time wasting tactics, which I get, but they are a bit too strict for things like that, to give a red card to people like Declan Rice for things like that, where there are serious challenges, there are serious moments, there are serious decisions that you could give red cards to players for. Not those things, right? It's absolutely like it takes away from the game, where you're like, okay, you're time wasting, you'll probably get a warning and a yellow card after that, but to give a red card for things on moments like that is a bit, it takes a huge part of the game away, and we don't want to see that. And I think, of course, like, we're talking about David Coote right now, but I think there's a bigger infection, a bigger issue with the PGMOL and the referees in the Premier League. That's what I think, right? And let me not talking about the PGMOL and the Premier League referees. Here's an incident that also happened. It was Chelsea versus Tottenham, and they were Chelsea were away to Tottenham, right? I can't remember the season, but this game is definitely memorable because it was Thomas Tuchel and Antonio Conte, right? I think 2 seasons back, and everyone remembers this game when in the end, Thomas Tuchel and Antonio Conte locked, and there was, I guess, Antonio Conte was trying to shake Thomas Tuchel's hand, or Thomas Tuchel was trying to shake Antonio Conte's hand, and it just kicked off. But that was not the part where the game, I think the entire game was very fiery, right? But there was a decision that was missed by another referee, a different referee, not David Coote, Anthony Taylor. I think he's one of the worst referees that I've ever seen anyway, but he missed a call where, what's his name? Romero, the Tottenham centre-back, pulled Cucurella's hair in the penalty box, and it should have been given as a penalty. I think it could have also easily been a red card, because that's like excessive force and aggression. But maybe, but it definitely should have been a yellow card. It definitely should have been a penalty to Chelsea. Now, that's not the thing. The problem was Mike Dean, one of the Premier League referees. I just spoke about him a few moments ago. He was operating as one of the VAR officials upstairs, and he saw the incident, right? But he said, and he came out a few months after that in an interview, and he said, these are his words: I couldn't send him, meaning Anthony Taylor, I couldn't send him to do a VAR review because he's a mate. So that's what he said. Yeah, he said he's a mate. I couldn't send him to do a VAR review because he knew Anthony Taylor got it wrong and maybe didn't see the incident. But he said, basically, I think he mentioned that the game was, quite fiery anyway, right? There was a lot going on, and he felt like he couldn't send his mate to do a VAR review where he might be put on the spot and forced to make a tough decision. Now, the job of the VAR, right, is to help out the referees in moments like that. That's a huge moment. Chelsea should have been given a penalty, right? And that's the kind of standards that the PGMOL and the Premier League referees have. They've dragged the Premier League refereeing standards to that kind of low, where because I'm your mate, I'm trying to protect you into making a tough decision. But what about the teams that are playing, right? What about just making the right decision? And I think there would have, like, no one would have thought anything of Anthony Taylor if he changed that decision and given a penalty. No one would have thought anything of Mike Dean. Sorry, no one would have thought anything of Mike Dean if he had, told Anthony Taylor, look, I think you missed something right there. It's a penalty to Chelsea. That's it. That's the job of the VAR, right? And the VAR assistants. Now him doing that and actually admitting to it, right? Fair play to him, is honest. But man, that is extraordinary. And I can't believe that wasn't made more of a story. And I think there should have been change right after that. There should have been, because it just tells me that maybe one, the referees don't know what they need to do, right? And we've seen this with VAR, and we've seen this quite a lot where referees don't make the right decision and they leave it all to the match official, like the match referee down on the pitch. And I feel like the Jamie Carragher, I think, has said this, has said, look, if you probably can't make the decisions, right, as a VAR assistant, but you can absolutely have a huge influence and say to the referee, look, I think you missed it. I think that is a penalty, or maybe that is this decision, right? Whatever the case could be. But you have to make sure that you help your referee, man. Like, that's the job of the VAR. So I think there's a bigger issue more than just David Coote saying he doesn't like Liverpool and calling Jurgen Klopp, the C word. I think there's a bigger issue with the PGMOL. They should be under review, under scrutiny, and I think the whole system has to be checked out, right? Now, the last thing, also, like I've spoken about Liverpool and other referees like Mike Dean. Here's another example. And this is not, this might not be true, right? And I really don't want it to be true. But this is a rumor that I've heard, that the PGMOL does not like Mikel Arteta because last season, after Arsenal lost 1-0 to Newcastle away, the game was on the 5th of November 2023. Mikel Arteta came out because of another controversy, another bad refereeing performance, where Newcastle scored a goal where you could have flagged quite a few points there, right? The ball went out, it should have been given as a throw in. Play continued, cross comes in, goes out of the box, another cross comes back, and this is the same play. Joe Linton on the back of Gabriel kind of nudges or pushes Gabriel not to get his flight, not to get, not to rise up and defend the cross coming in. Joe Linton heads it back, goal, Anthony Gordon. Newcastle win. Now that changes the title. If that was a point, that you could have argued that maybe that's one of the points where Arsenal dropped points, or get one of the games where Arsenal dropped points and could have won the league, or maybe pushed us closer to Manchester City. Who knows, right? Who knows? But that's another point where you look at and you feel like, another bad refereeing performance. Mikel Arteta comes out after the game and calls the refereeing standards in the Premier League as a disgrace. He was fuming, and rightfully so, because that was a bad decision, bad performance by the referees on that game. And I think, this is a rumor that I've heard. I've heard that, the PGMOL didn't take too well to that and those comments by Mikel Arteta. And ever since, right, we've seen, especially this season, right, we've seen a lot of decisions go against Arsenal where it's like, even as Arsenal fans, right, even myself, some of the things that have gone against us, I'm like, maybe that's the right decision. But when other teams do the same thing, they're not punished in the same way. Of course, we're going to talk about the Declan Rice sending off early on against Brighton, where, earlier on before the red card in the game, a Brighton player, Pedro, not Pedro Neto. I forgot his name, but the Brighton player, wicked player, great player, kicks the ball away, and he doesn't get a yellow card. Declan Rice merely touches the ball away to delay the restart, and he gets a yellow card, ultimately a red card. He's off, right? We've seen some of the incidences that have happened with William Saliba and Leandro Trossard, and I'm not saying like all the decisions against Arsenal are incorrect, but my thing is the consistency is frustrating as a fan, because other teams do the same thing, but they don't get as punished, as Arsenal do. And maybe I'm not trying to start a conspiracy theory, but I'm just saying what I see, right? This is my observation, and I've spoken about other teams. I've spoken about Liverpool. I've just spoken about Chelsea. Now Arsenal. There are quite a few incidences and moments where you look at and you think, how can the PGMOL and the referees be this bad? It's just hard to almost impossible to be that bad. But they are. That's why I think there needs to be an overhaul, a huge change, a review of what's going on with the Premier League referees and the PGMOL. Howard Webb has to be under a huge amounts of pressure. He has to be questioned, and his role in the PGMOL, and how is he going to change all this, right? And he has a huge job now. And as I said earlier on in the video, there's this huge controversy with David Coote, but also it's also come out, and a new video I just saw it today actually. David Coote, I don't know where he was, but he was snorting a white powdery substance that looks like cocaine. He rolled up a money note, and he was snorting a line of what looks like cocaine, white powdery substance, with a bank card right next there, or right next to the whole video. So I think, and this is one thing, right? Like, if you see things like that, then you start to question: do referees sometimes go to or officiate games while high, under the influence of drugs? That's like something that you have to question. Maybe not just drugs, maybe alcohol, I don't know. Because what I heard is, and this is something that I cannot really confirm, maybe I shouldn't even be saying this, but I heard that the Premier League referees and the PGMOL does not drug test its referees. So maybe this is something that's going to change because of the video about David Coote and what's come out, right? So this is the kind of thing that I think needs to happen. We need to have a huge review and a huge change of the standards, the performances, and ultimately the entire refereeing structure in the Premier League, the PGMOL. So I think I've spoken about everything that I wanted to say. It's quite frustrating. And the Arsenal fan that I spoke about earlier said, it's banter, it's fun, it's funny, when it happens to other teams. And sometimes when it happens to you, like once off, you look away and you're like, okay, bad decision against us. We complain, we get frustrated. But when it happens every weekend, it takes away from the game. It is not funny anymore. It is not banterous. It needs to be eliminated from the game, right? We need to stop, like, the focus on referees has to be reduced now. So those are my thoughts. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like and follow us on Instagram at WeTalkFootball24 and on YouTube at WeTalkFootball24. Follow us on Facebook as well at WeTalkFootball. We love football. We talk about football. And look out for my weekly videos, as I said, of player comparisons between NBA legends or NBA players and football players as well. So that's really fun. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.